the dead of night, beneath the howling winds that rattled Holloway Manor, something stirred. Not the scurrying of rats or the groan of rotting wood. No, this was something else. Something breathing. Amidst the dust-covered relics of a forgotten past sat a porcelain doll, its green glass eyes gleaming in the moonlight. A crack ran across its delicate face, splitting its painted lips into something that almost resembled a smirk. And then, in the silence, a whisper slithered through the air. Soft, inviting, in a voice that did not belong in the world of the living. Play with me. In the heart of Blackwood, a town shrouded in perpetual mist, stood an abandoned mansion known as Holloway Manor. Whispers of its dark past kept the townsfolk away, yet one object inside remained eerily untouched by time. A porcelain doll with glassy green eyes, tangled golden curls, and a tattered crimson dress. No one knew how long it had been there, but legend spoke of a terrible curse attached to it. Eleanor Grayson, an antique collector with an eye for the unusual, had spent years chasing the legend of the cursed doll. When she finally found it inside Holloway Manor, she couldn't resist taking it home. The moment she cradled it in her arms, an unnatural chill spread through her veins. She dismissed it as imagination, but something inside the doll's eyes gleamed, almost as if it was watching her. That night, as Eleanor placed the doll on a shelf in her study, she heard faint whispers drifting through her home. The words were unintelligible, yet filled with an eerie malice. She shook her head, blaming exhaustion, and went to bed. But as she turned off the lights, her eyes caught something chilling. The doll had shifted slightly, now facing the doorway. Each night, Eleanor found the doll in a different place. One evening, it was sitting at the foot of her bed. Another time, she discovered it resting on her kitchen table, its tiny hands positioned as if holding an invisible object. Fear clawed at her mind, yet she couldn't bring herself to part with it. One fateful night, Eleanor woke up gasping. The air was thick with the scent of decay. She turned on her bedside lamp, her breath hitching in her throat. The doll was now sitting on her pillow, inches from her face. Its lips, once painted in a delicate rose hue, were now cracked and slightly parted. Then it spoke. "Play with me." The voice was neither that of a child nor an adult. It was a discordant whisper, layered with countless voices. The walls of her room seemed to close in, the shadows warping into twisted figures. Desperate for answers, Eleanor researched the doll's origins. She discovered that it once belonged to Annalise Holloway, a lonely child who died mysteriously in the mansion over a century ago. Legend said Annalise's spirit clung to the doll, seeking companionship, but something darker had taken root inside it, something that fed on fear and suffering. Eleanor decided to burn the doll. She took it to her backyard, doused it in kerosene, and struck a match. As the flames engulfed it, a horrific shriek erupted, shaking the ground beneath her. The fire twisted unnaturally, forming a human-like figure, its green eyes burning into Eleanor's soul. Then silence. But when she returned inside, her blood turned to ice. The doll sat on her bed, unscathed. Eleanor knew she could not destroy the doll. Instead, she locked it in a lead-lined box and buried it deep within the abandoned Holloway Manor. As she walked away, a heavy silence settled over the house. She could almost hear the soft giggle of a child carried on the wind. But in the town of Blackwood, stories began again. Children claimed to see a girl with green eyes watching them from the woods. And sometimes at night, faint whispers echoed through the town, soft, pleading, in a voice layered with many others. "Play with me." The doll remains hidden, for now. But curses never truly die. Perhaps one day another curious soul will unearth it, and when they do, the whispers will begin again. Would you be the next one to hear them? The town of Blackwood had nearly forgotten about Eleanor Grayson. Months had passed since she buried the cursed doll in Holloway Manor, and life had resumed its quiet, dreary rhythm. But one stormy evening, a little girl named Lily Fairchild vanished. Her mother swore she had only turned away for a moment. 1 second, Lily was playing in the front yard. Then she was gone. The only thing left behind was an old tattered doll sitting on the porch. A porcelain doll, with green glass eyes. Lily's mother, Margaret, clutched the doll in shaking hands, screaming her daughter's name into the wind. The police searched the woods, the streets, even the abandoned Holloway Manor, but Lily was nowhere to be found. That night, Margaret sat in Lily's empty bedroom, the doll still in her lap. Something about it felt wrong. The way its head tilted slightly, as if listening. The way its lips, cracked and worn, seemed almost smirking. Then, as the clock struck 3, the house came alive with noise. A giggle, a child's laughter, distant yet deafening. The sound of tiny footsteps pattering across the wooden floor. Margaret turned toward the doll, her breath hitching. Its head had moved, and its lips had parted. Margaret ran, but no matter where she went, the whispers followed. "Mommy, help me." The voice was unmistakable. Lily's. Desperate, Margaret clutched the doll, shaking it violently. "Where is she? What did you do?" The air around her grew heavy, suffocating. Then, in the silence, the doll's glassy eyes flicked toward her. Its cracked lips moved once more. "She's with me now." Margaret sought out Eleanor Grayson, the only person in town who knew the legend. She found her in a cabin on the outskirts of Blackwood, aged beyond her years, her eyes haunted. Eleanor told her the truth. The doll was not simply cursed. It was a vessel, trapping the souls of those who touched it. Lily wasn't lost. She was inside the doll. There was only one way to break the curse, a ritual. But it required a price, a willing sacrifice. Margaret didn't hesitate. Eleanor led Margaret back to Holloway Manor. They entered the decayed nursery where the curse had begun. Candles flickered around them as Eleanor placed the doll in the center of the room. "You must offer yourself," Eleanor whispered. "A life for a life." Margaret hesitated only for a moment. Then, with trembling hands, she took the doll in her arms and whispered, "Take me instead." The wind roared through the house. Shadows erupted from the walls,
twisting into clawed hands. The doll's green eyes shifted, locking onto Margaret's. The last thing she heard was Lily's voice, calling from far, far away. "Mommy?" Then, darkness. The next morning, the townsfolk found Holloway Manor empty. No sign of Margaret, no trace of Eleanor. But in the nursery, sitting in the dust-covered rocking chair, was a new doll. Her porcelain face was cracked, her tangled golden curls slightly different. And her eyes, her green, glassy eyes, held a sorrow too deep for a mere toy. Some say on quiet nights, you can hear her whispering, calling, waiting for someone new to play with her. The doll waits. One day, someone will find her again. Maybe that someone is you.